Hey, my tech friends, thanks for stopping by. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's continue to grow this channel. Hope you guys enjoy this video.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Windows 10 X-Lite Edition. So in today's episode, I figured what we would do is we would take a look at this particular operating system and see if we could fix some of the additional security configuration issues this operating system has that is outside of our just vanilla Windows 10 configuration. Now, in our previous videos yesterday, we reviewed the operating system, we took a look at the config, we took a look at what is turned on and off, we looked at the firewall configuration, we ran a nested scan on the system, we came back with results that were higher than our vanilla Windows 10 out-of-the-box configuration. After we did that, we decided, you know what, let's see if we could take a vanilla Windows 10 system, build out PowerShell configuration scripts, and lock down the operating system. And that is where this video starts. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the basic configuration steps of locking down the operating system. We're going to go through the basic configuration steps of adding the registry keys to fix the SMB signing issue for SMB3. We are going to go through the firewall configuration and run our PowerShell scripts to stop the firewall from allowing certain things and certain processes and configurations through it. We're going to run our DISM commands on the system to remove functions of the operating system that were set up to be disabled from the first place, but still are part of the operating system. We're going to make a couple additional registry changes outside of the SMB configuration to remove some functions for the advertising ID stuff from the Windows operating system. We're also going to kill off some additional services from running on the system that are not necessary because the tied applications to those services are no longer present in the operating system. And then we're going to look at the UAC controller and fix that, as well as fixing the Edge update services, which are still running in the background, and fix Windows Update itself so the system will update properly. So there's going to be quite a bit involved in this process. Try to do this all in one video. We may break this up into two different videos depending on how long this goes. My general cutoff on a video length is I try to make them no longer than 40 minutes. So if it does push beyond that, then chances are we're going to break this off into two different videos. Okay, so we're going to start this video at Nessus. This is the scan that we ran specifically from yesterday, but I ended up running it again today just to make sure that we start at the same exact point. So this is our X-Lite base, X-Lite Windows 10 operating system, specifically to our X-Lite 10. You can see we have 30 infos and one medium. The one medium is our SMB version 3 patch that we haven't applied to the system yet. And we're going to compare that to our Windows supported operating system, Windows 10, with no policy, Windows Firewall turned off. 24 infos. There's no additional medium because this doesn't have SMB3 turned on from the factory on our 22H2 build of Windows 10. However, the X-Lite edition does have it turned on, which is that one medium. We also have 30 infos versus the other Windows 10, the base vanilla version of 24, which means that right off the bat, this thing's configured worse than our vanilla version of Windows 10. And since Windows 10 itself, as a vanilla version, is no configuration, we have to take into consideration that this particular X-Lite system has had the opposite of no configuration. In other words, has made it configured but removed security versus added security. So in this video, we're going to attempt to get this number down to at least the 24 mark, and if not further, through the configuration method. Okay, so we have our base now for our system configuration. And we do have a series of scripts that I had written yesterday in our attempt to fix our Windows 10 operating systems, our homebrew operating systems. Now, if you didn't check out that video, I'll put the link in the description. But in that video, we go over specifically what we're going to do to lock down the operating system and what each one of these scripts actually do. So that way you could follow along in the process, and this isn't something that you just see as a blind script or configuration. Now, the details of inside these scripts will be inside the next video that will be on the other series of videos in the other playlist. This particular video, however, we're going to run on this operating system, on this X-Lite system, to see if we could trim down additional security concerns or risks on the operating system to allow our scan to come back with less junk in it than our base Windows 10 operating system. But before we run any of these scripts, there's a couple things I want to do on this operating system first. And specifically what those are is I want to set a password. I want to set up an administrative user with that password. I want to disable this account and delete it. And then I also want to delete the rest of the additional accounts out of the system and only keep the accounts that are necessary to run the Windows operating system. In addition, I want to change the computer name. Okay, so to do that, what we're going to do is we're just going to click on Start. We're going to look for this PC. We're going to right-click and choose Properties. Choose Rename this PC. We're going to rename it something else. And then click on Next. And then we're going to restart our system. Okay, our system just came back up. So the next thing I want to do in this system is I want to actually set our user account information. So we're going to go into Computer Management. Then we're going to go into Local Users and Groups. Select Users, and we're going to see the list of users here. Now the administrator account on this particular machine is built in. So as it's a built-in account for the administrating of the computers, we're going to make sure that we create another account. Okay, so we created our username, we set a description for it, or rather the full name for it, one or the other. We set a password for it, and we're going to click on Create. And then we're going to click on Close. And we're going to double click on our account that we just created, go to Member of, and Add Administrators. Check name, and click OK. Then we're going to remove users. We're going to click Apply, and we're going to click OK. Now, before we do anything else with any other accounts in here, we're going to log out of the system and log back in as this new user we created to confirm that we could get into the system first before we make any changes locking ourselves out of the system. I'll put in the description down below what to do if you are in that scenario and you do lock yourself out of the system. Okay, so we're just going to right-click on Start. We're going to do Sign Out. Down here, we're going to see our admin and our test user. We're going to choose our test user, and we're going to put our password in. Then we're going to log into Windows. Okay, so on initial login, we're going to get prompted to reconfigure our Start is Back configuration. We're going to choose our funky Start menu. Let's make it look like Windows 7. I'm just going to leave it like that for the time being. So there we go. We got our Start menu back. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to go back into our computer configuration or computer management settings. And we want to clean up those other accounts. Okay, so specifically what we're going to do here is we are going to right-click on Admin, and we're going to choose Delete. We're not going to delete the admin account, the administrator account. You can't delete the built-in account. However, with that said, what we do need to do is we need to uncheck the password never expires option in here and click on OK. And we're going to do the same thing here. Uncheck the password never expires and click OK. And then we're going to uncheck the password never expires and click OK. And then we're going to uncheck the password never expires and click OK. And so on and so forth, because those will show up as negatives inside of our Nessus scan. The Nessus scan can see the passwords, and if the passwords are set to never expire, then it knows that the system can have old password, old configuration in there. Now, we're still going to get hit because each one of these accounts would need to be logged into in order for the system to see them as active accounts. And the problem is if they're not active accounts, it just thinks that they're stagnant accounts. Now, a lot of these accounts, if you actually read into what these are, is they're system-based accounts. And the thing is since this particular system's modified to not use these accounts aren't actually accessed or are logged into. The problem is since they're kind of hashed into the operating system, it's a real fiasco to remove them. So that's likely why they still exist and why they're just set to disabled. Now, keep in mind that even your out-of-the-box Windows 10 configuration will likely have your WDA utility account disabled out of the box. It's used as a service account, but it's not necessarily an active account. So Microsoft has these security features or configurations built into the back end that the account, while it exists, it doesn't necessarily exist. So it's not set for interactive logon. You couldn't log into that account. It's really done for security. Okay, so now that we have our accounts configured and we're logged into our new account with a password, the next thing I want to do on this actual operating system is once again reboot the system, bring it back up, and we will start to go through our scripting to see if we could lock out and change the configuration of the actual X-Lite system. Okay, so we are back into the operating system after a reboot. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go into our tools directory, into our configurations, into our scripts, and this is where we have our script configuration. Now, I didn't write these out with any direction at this point. So these particular scripts that I wrote out for the system are not necessarily in any kind of order. Now I may put together the order where we could follow a specific step-by-step process on the configuration on this. I may also combine all of these things into a single script, but for the sake of it right now, and since we're going through the testing process to see if this actually helps us secure this operating system, I'm going to actually run each one of these options, each one of these scripts individually, and then we're going to reboot the system between each script run just to see if there's any outcome or any errors in the operating system when the system comes back up. Now I also want to take a look at what we have currently configured for our performance aspect of the operating system. Specifically, we have 2 cores. We're sitting at 4%. We have 1.3 gigs of memory being used right now on the actual operating system out of 8. So let's continue on here and let's go through these scripts and see if running these scripts even further reduces the footprint of the operating system as far as performance aspect. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do on this actual system is to run through our DISM cleanup configuration. And our DISM cleanup configuration, even though it's written out as a full script, is going to require individual lines of code executed just because of the way the DISM commands work. It requires a reboot after each one of these removals. Just like you would go through a feature update or a feature add remove inside of your add remove programs, the Windows features on and off switch, that's what these things do. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn these things on and off individually. And since this is in PowerShell, I'm literally just going to highlight each section and I'm going to run the section. And then when it completes, it's going to tell me it needs to reboot. But if you hit Control C, you could go down to the next line and do so on and so forth through each one of these things. So let's run through all these, and then what I will do is I will reboot the system and bring it back up, and I will start the video at that point. Okay, so we completed all of the feature removals from the operating system. And you'll notice things in here like Internet Explorer and SMB1 protocol. Those are both enabled by default for whatever reason on the X-Lite, as well as the Spectre 10 system. I'm not really sure why, but we've disabled that now on this operating system. So let's reboot this box. Okay, so the system came back up. We've run those DISM commands. We haven't lost any functionality in the OS that I could tell yet. It seems to be fine. We're going to go into the customizations again. So we've done these two, are completed at this point. Next thing we have to do is we actually have to go through our firewall configuration and fix the firewall policy. Okay, so our firewall configuration on this particular system is vast. So the reason why is because while a lot of this can be done by name or display name or description, it's not uniform between one homebrew operating system and the next. In other words, some of our Windows 10 machines in a home configuration, like just basically your Windows 10 machine out of the box ISO file, vanilla version, is organized differently than the homebrew systems. The homebrew systems don't necessarily have names. Some of them display names. Some of them have customizations in there with different names for the same firewall rules, and there's really no rhyme or reason for it, but that's just the way it is. So as a result, I've had to go through these things and kind of customize this. Now, I expect this to fail a bunch of different times in this process, but the list of details in your name area, display name area, are a combination of the configuration that we have for our vanilla, our Scepter, or Spectre, and our X-Lite system. So we should be able to run the same script on all three of the systems, and it should still disable the exact features we needed to disable to lock down the systems. So with that said, let's run this. Actually, you know what? First, let's run this. Let's do a get command to get the firewall details original. Okay, there we go. So we just ran it and we have outputted the file to this particular path. Let's take a look at that first and then we'll jump into our firewall configuration. Okay, so these are our configurations, our out-of-the-box configurations for our firewall rules. And there is an enormous amount. And keep in mind, right now, I trinicated this so that way we're only going to show enabled true. There are additional ones that are configured in there as false. They just exist as rules but aren't actually active. These are just the ones that are active. And there's a lot. So what we're going to do is we actually want to look specifically at our size. So right now we're at 365K. Let's run that script and see if we reduce the size of our actual firewall output. Okay, so the first thing I did is I changed the actual output now to firewall details new. And the reason why is because after I run this and I talk, I'm almost guaranteed I'm going to forget. And then I'll run this again and it'll just rewrite over the original configuration, and that doesn't help anybody. So let's make sure that that's changed first, and we're going to jump over here and we're going to actually execute this. And again, I expect to see errors down here, and quite a bit of them, because we have things in here that are named differently from one system to the next. Even though they lock down the same port configuration, they're named differently from one system to the next. So in my script, I created the configuration based off of both the display name, the description in some cases, as well as the name itself of the actual corresponding firewall rule. So while this runs through this will lock down the system as much as it can based off of that detail. Okay, so that took quite a bit actually to run through that. And again, I mean, maybe not so surprisingly, it is 185 changes in the firewall in order for us to fix all the pinholes in the firewall from the configuration of this operating system. So let's go back over here and let's execute our firewall output. All right, great. So let's go over here. And there we go. So our new firewall rules are now 194 kilobytes. So that's quite a bit smaller than it was on our last configuration. And actually the list is quite a bit shorter. And now at this point, we should be in relatively good shape as far as security is concerned from our Windows firewall perspective. Because that's going to cut all of the operating system removal changes that took place in the X-Lite operating system out of the firewall configuration for the listening ports, and allow us to lock down the operating system once we turn the firewall back on. So that's the second step. The third step is going to be we need to fix the SMB. So the next part here is we're going to fix the SMB, and specifically what this does is it adds registry configuration to the LAN server and workstation to require and enable security signature on the SMB, which will get rid of that error message for SMB version 3 and allow us to secure the SMB. And to do that, while I would generally just right-click on this and run it as admin, since this system doesn't have UAC and we haven't fixed that yet, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to open up a command prompt, run the command prompt as admin, because for whatever reason, the UAC is still borked, but it's not completely borked on the actual configuration for the command line. And then we're going to have to change directory to tools, and our customization, and scripts, and then we'll do CLS. We'll do Windows SMB fix.bat. Those all completed successfully. So now what we need to do is we need to reboot the system, and when we come back up, we'll go into the service console and we'll start working on that. Okay guys, so the system came back up after our SMB patch. So at this point now, I want to fix the service structure itself so we could stop the services that don't need to be running, because quite frankly,
they're running, but the corresponding applications that use those services are missing from the operating system. So at this point, we've shrunk the hard drive utilization because they've removed the application, but the service that's corresponding with it is still running, so it's still pumping memory and processor utilization, which doesn't do anybody any good. So to that effect, let's go into our service fix, which is specifically this script here. And what we're going to do is we're going to run this. But the problem is right now we have no UAC controls. So that means we can't run anything as admin. And how you could prove that or see that is if you go into Start, you go into Run, and you type in like CMD, we'll see my username, my Tor username, right? Now if I'm going to right-click on this thing and I'm going to choose Command Prompt and Run as Administrator, you still see my username. So we are elevated in that select administrator command prompt versus select administrator with the actual command line listed. However, for the sake of running applications, even though this looks like it's an elevated content, there's a bug in Windows 10 and 11 that even if you disable, UAC, even if UAC is configured in a way that it thinks that everything should be run as admin regardless, it doesn't actually work right. So you lose functionality, so things may fail that wouldn't usually fail. Things may not work correctly without UAC turned on. Also, you miss out on added security, which is kind of important. So at minimum, you should have at least the consent on admin and the ability to pop up the window saying yes. So what we're going to do is just, again, keep note of the actual username that this is running from. And we're going to run our fix UAC command line here to fix the registry keys. So let's just run it as admin. You're going to see the little pop-up here that we must reboot in order for that to take place. Let's restart again. And once we get back into this system, let's then go through our fixed services. Okay, guys, so we're back up and running. UAC is re-enabled. And how we can tell that is if we go to Command Prompt now, we still have the Command Prompt as the user. But if we do the escalation, you get the pop-up, we're going to click on yes. And now you're going to see that we're running it as System32. So select administrator command prompt running through System32. So that's UAC. That's the access control giving us basically root access into the administrative account to run applications versus administrative access through our own username. So there's a variable that takes place in the registry when you do it this way versus running it with the UAC controllers turned off. And unfortunately in Windows 10 and 11, that variable is a bug, and as a result, it causes a slew of different issues, and things just don't work correctly. You also miss out on the security function, which is, never good, especially from a security scan standpoint. So turning UAC back on was really pretty simple. It's 2 lines of command prompt, and again, I'll add all of the scripting details to the description in the other video that I create on the combination of this operating system and our Ghost 10 operating system as one giant script that does everything from a configuration standpoint, so you don't have to do like itemized configuration dropdown. I'm just doing that right now, again, to be clear on the process and then show you what the results are after the fact. If there are any changes, we don't know because we're still missing portions of the operating system. Okay, so let's jump back into this thing. Let's go back into our tools directory. Let's go back into our customization directory. So we fixed the UAC, that's done. So from here up, those things are done. We've also fixed the SMB, so that's done. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to run this script here, which what this does is it disables the notifications on Windows because the notifications are really obnoxious and I'm sick and tired of dealing with them and seeing them pop up all over the place, so that gets rid of that. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to fix the service structure. So since I now have admin access into my command prompt, I'm actually just going to do change directory. I'm going to go to CD tools. I'm going to change directory again to our customization and then scripts. And then what we're going to do is we're going to actually run our service fix. So service fix.bat, we're going to run that. And there we go, that's done. So what that does is that disables services that don't need to run with Windows because the corresponding applications don't exist in the Windows operating system anymore. So now at this point, we have all of that stuff configured. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to run as admin to re-enable the Windows firewalls, or rather not the Windows firewall, but the Windows Update services. So that way, in our Windows Update configuration, we could update the operating system. Yeah, so resume updates is now available. It's so stupid that they would black it out till 3000. The system gets updates. You need updates in order for the system to remain secure. It's dumb not to have that turned on. And from a security scan perspective, it's not going to look good on our scan having it turned off. So now that we have the service turned on and we have all of our configuration done, let's run a Nessus scan against the system and see what it comes back with. Okay guys, so now we're back in our Nessus system. And I just ran the scan for the script fix. We can see it here. So just to recap real quick, the X-Lite base, which was the Windows 10 operating system that we've been working on the past close to an hour, we can see we had 30 infos and 1 medium vulnerability reported. And we ran all those scripts against the system, and we made the changes manually to our user account, and we made sure that the Windows updates were enabled. The Windows firewall is still turned off. And we have 11 infos. That means we were able to trim out configuration issues on the X-Lite operating system. And I'm betting that once we turn the firewall back on and we scan the system, even if we allow this particular system through the firewall, that this number will go even lower. I'm wondering if we could even get it down to 0. Let's do one more scan on this system, allowing the Nessus scanner in through the firewall on that Windows system, turning the firewall on, and allowing this to do a full port scan to see if we get a lower or a higher number. Okay guys, so we just finished our firewall enabled scan. I did cancel it. I canceled it at 98% because it just wasn't giving me any additional results, and I didn't see a reason to. So it's possible that this number would be more like 4 or 3. But with the Windows firewall turned on and me configuring our Nessus to punch through the firewall on a specific port so the scan can actually run against the system and test the firewall, we drop our info down to 2 configuration or 2 possible vulnerability issues on the actual operating system. So this trims all of the fat out of the OS and fixes the security on the X-Lite OS with the scripting that we've done. Now the question is have we gained any performance on the actual operating system? And if we haven't, let's take a look at a couple quick tips that we could do to trim down some of the fat on the OS without removing security of the OS. Okay, so we're back over on our X-Lite system. Now we know it's relatively secure. Actually, at this point, our X-Lite 10 system here with the modifications we've done, the registry changes, the service structure changes, the firewall fixes, all things put into it, we're actually in better shape than our original Ghost 20H2 configuration system, which says a lot because that operating system out of the box was extremely polished. So now that we're in X-Lite and we have this thing secure, let's take a look and see if we could actually lower the amount of resources used. Now we'll notice that we're down to 1.2 gigs of memory utilization, and we're right around the 1 to 2% CPU at idle, which is better than it was, and quite frankly, pretty darn good. So let's continue on and actually see if we could trim out more of it. So what we're going to do is we are going to take a look, I think, at Defender. And the reason why is I'm guessing here, so the MSMP engine here, which is using 82 megs of memory, I'm guessing that that is probably not configured correctly. So let's take a look at that. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go to Settings, which is right here. We're going to go to Update and Security. On the left-hand side, we're going to find Windows Security. We're going to find Virus and Threat Protection. And then we're going to scroll down in here. We're going to look specifically for Manage Settings. And yeah, so there we go. Right ahead, right? So we have real-time protection on, which is fine. We have cloud-delivered protection on, which is fine. We don't need automatic sample submission turned on. Matter of fact, that should be turned off, because if you get something on your machine, it's funky, it's a weird file name, it'll send it to Microsoft. You don't need that turned on. Then we need to look at our exclusions list. And the reason why is because right now we have no exclusions, which means that the operating system is scanning the Defender folder, which is using the scanner. So realistically, likely what's taking place is the antivirus scanner is running constantly because it's scanning a file that's continuously being accessed, which is itself. So it's basically a big loop that takes place in Defender, and it's a problem that's existed in the Microsoft security configuration since probably Windows XP. And the fact that it isn't changed or configured on the X-Lite system tells me that this wasn't touched. So let's take a look. Let's actually clean this up. Let's add an exclusion of the folder, and we will add the location for the Microsoft Defender. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to actually navigate yourself to the Windows, the C drive, program files, and then Windows Defender, and just select Windows Defender and then hit select folder. And that will add the Microsoft Windows Defender in here for an exclusion in Defender. At which point now we need to either restart the system or we'd have to restart the service. Now I don't know that we could kill the actual task. Yeah, I didn't think so. So we'll likely have to just reboot the system so it adds the exclusion to the actual Windows Defender folder so the Windows Defender application doesn't scan the Defender folder. Okay guys, so we're going to end this video here. I figured at this point, since our system's come back up, we're still at about the 1.1 to 1.2 memory utilization. We're sitting right around the idle at 1 to 2% CPU utilization. We've secured the operating system with our scripting and configuration changes. We've ran our Nessa scans on the system. At this point, the system is resolved as far as security issues are concerned. I guess the next question is after all the changes we did to lock down the OS to make it function, can we still use it as a daily driver? Can we still run the updates on it? Can we use this system with software installed? Does it still function? Is there any issues with it once it's got all of that software and stuff on it? Does it bring back all the security risks? These are questions that we should be able to answer in our next video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Take it easy.